Hello, Jen here with a new layout for you for Tuesday's inspiration. This week I'm combining two of the inspiration pieces, this gorgeous floral piece from Mel, and then this beautiful fall image just speaks to me so much. This is my heart in an image from Hollie. So I am going to combine those two inspiration pieces into my layout, and that is exactly what this series is about. It is sharing some inspiration that we see between Lynda, Hollie, Mel, and myself. Sometimes it is a photo that we've actually taken. Sometimes it's something maybe that we have seen somewhere else, a different type of photo or a quote or a sketch or a scrap lift, whatever it might be. And we just share it with the group weekly. And then we all create a layout around that image or that inspiration piece. And so we try to do it every week. One of us shares an inspiration piece every week. We may not all as a group get to scrap on that particular week. We kind of take things, in stride, and we all have busy lives with kids and pets and obligations and things like that. But yeah, we all just kind of have fun looking for those inspiration pieces and dreaming up what our layouts might be. And it's just kind of a nice casual series. So definitely follow along. I have left links to all of the ladies down below so you can go check out their channels. And I think all of us post on Instagram as well, so you can go and check out our projects on Instagram. Please consider subscribing to their channels and showing them a little bit of love and support. That would mean the world to me as well. So, of course, I'm going to go with watercolors because that is my absolute favorite thing to do. And this is my happy place, just playing with the colors, having some, splotches of water that I can just dip my brush into and let that color kind of, leave the brush and go into the pools of water that are on the paper, and then just start to blend and move around and kind of mix together. I love it. Every time you do this, it's going to come out completely different. So definitely, if you aren't someone who likes to do this very often, or you don't have a lot of practice with it, be prepared that you don't always have as much control as you do in maybe other types of art. You are basically just smushing these colors together and seeing what comes out. I have definitely learned to be a little bit more patient, especially when I see colors that maybe are on the surface kind of looking like, oh, that could be mud, or that's going to be a brown or a gray or a color that I don't want. Hopefully you kind of saw that I had a couple of those puddles of kind of mucky color, but as soon as I used my serviette to kind of mop up those puddles, those bright, vibrant colors were sitting underneath. So it's all about practice and knowing your particular paints and knowing the papers that you're working with and how much water you can use and how much you can kind of work those colors, and just experimenting and having fun, and not worrying too much about the process. Just kind of let the process do its thing. And when it's all said and done and everything has dried, it always looks a little bit different than it did when it was wet. So you definitely want to let things kind of do their magic, go through their own process of drying and blending. And if you really don't like how it turned out, put it to the side, grab another piece of paper and try it again. Don't throw your stuff out, because I always find that when I'm trying to blend stuff, or I'm trying to make something, or sometimes I'll just take a little chunk of paper because I want to test the paper, or I want to test the new, like a new paint or whatever it might be, and I just kind of play around and see what the colors can do. I like to keep those scraps because you can punch shapes out of them or use them as layering pieces or throw them into a junk journal. So I don't have, tons and tons and tons of these scraps laying around, but I do keep them. I don't throw them out. I never think that anything that I've kind of played with or practiced on is a waste. And so if it's not something that seems to be working for the project that I'm focused on in that moment, I just pop it to the side, and I know at some point I can always grab it to, use it for something else. So I definitely don't think it's ever a waste of time or a waste of your products to go ahead and kind of just give something a try. But yeah, that was my little spiel on watercolors. And when I say watercolors, I actually mean any kind of paints, any kind of mixed media that you're using. There's usually a learning curve to most things. And so every time you pull out your acrylic paints or texture pastes or inks or whatever it might be, and, do something new with them, it isn't always going to turn out exactly as you hoped. And you need to practice, and you need to play, and you need to kind of get familiar with your products. And so don't throw that stuff out because you never know when it might come in handy. So I went ahead and let mine dry, and I let it dry completely because I knew I was going to be stamping on top of it. And I don't know if the camera picks it up very well. It's actually we're in the middle of a snowstorm right now where when I am filming this, you can't tell obviously, but I know because it suddenly got super, super dark, and this is actually in the middle of the day and it's just really dark. But so I don't know if you can really see, but when this paper was wet, it was quite crumpled and wrinkled, and as the watercolors dried, it really relaxed quite a bit and kind of didn't go fully back to being flat, but it's definitely a lot more flat than it was when it was wet. So give your paper the time it needs to just dry. Watercolors don't always take that long, especially if you've just done a really kind of light, one layer kind of coat of color. But even with the amount of water that I added and how much I kind of sprayed and played and added extra water and stuff to the paper, it didn't take very long to dry. So make sure you let it completely dry if you're going to be doing this type of technique, so that the ink isn't pulling up any of the colors or struggling to kind of sit over top of wet paint, and you'll get kind of a crisper, cleaner stamp. My paper is also textured, so I'm not a great stamper, and I think it's because I'm a lazy stamper. But my stamps aren't the most crisp and clean. I think probably if I was using a rubber mat, or I went and got the mouse pad that I sometimes use, I probably would have got stamps that were a little bit cleaner. But I didn't particularly need to have my stamps be nice and crisp and clean. I'm just kind of going for the general feel of those flowers kind of in this vertical column down the page with the watercolor colors, yep, and the kind of outlines. So rather than having large flowers, I wanted to have leaves. That's where the fall image comes in. And so I'm just stamping a whole bunch of leaves. So I let it dry completely, obviously, because I wanted to have as crisp as possible, but I didn't think it was necessary to have every image look exactly perfect. And that is just me. I knew between the textured paper and just me maybe not using all the tools that I could have, that not all of my stamps were going to work. I also find sometimes, depending on the quality of your watercolors, and this would definitely ring true if you were using acrylic paint, like watering down acrylic paint, or doing any type of mixed media that has any kind of substance to it. Sometimes when you have multiple layers of watercolors that are more on like the school end, like a student grade watercolor, or just a little bit cheaper, and they have sort of a chalkiness to them, which these ones definitely do, the stamp sometimes pulls up bits of the watercolor. So if it's wet, it's going to pull it up, probably almost definitely, but even when they're dry, it kind of pulls that up sometimes. And it might also have to do with the ink that you're using. A more kind of tacky, gushier ink might end up doing that more often. But making sure everything kind of dries as much as possible ahead of time, I think it helps with that if you find that that's something that happens. So I just went ahead and I stamped a whole bunch of leaves and some little acorns and stuff, just whatever random leaf stamps that I could find. And then I did have a scrap of paper with some watercolors that were really, really similar to the colors that I used. It was from the same paint palette set. It just had been done on a different day. So, it's not identical to the colors and how they turned out on my layout, but close enough that I thought I would go ahead and just hand draw some leaves that could kind of be more 3D and pop up from that background element. And so, yeah, I literally just drew them. I showed you two different things there. So for me, I thought it was easier to take a thicker black marker, draw out my shapes, which are very like crude leaf shapes. I just wanted stuff that I could easily cut. But I figured a sharper, like a Sharpie that's nice and thick, I could draw those shapes and then I could cut and have a little bit of wiggle room that I could actually cut into the black outline to make it look more like a stamped image to match what I have on this background piece. But the other option is if you just wanted to go ahead and cut, you could cut a bunch of shapes and then just take your marker and kind of outline the edges, or, you could go even more old school and just take a blending tool and blend color onto those images. Or remember when we used to just take the piece of whatever we wanted and scrape it along the edge of the ink pad to actually ink the edges? You could do that too. It totally depends on the look you're going for and if you want to have any kind of border. If you also don't really like doing kind of the hand-drawn image, you could definitely run your paper after the watercolors have completely dried. You could run that paper through your Cricut or your Silhouette and cut out a bunch of leaves. I also have done it where I've taken my white cardstock, run that through my Silhouette, cut out all my leaves, and then left the paper on my cutting mat and just watercolored it on top of that. So lots of different options for how you want to potentially color these leaves. I just thought it would be fun. Even though I feel like the watercolor gives a lot of dimension, there's lots of colors in there. And then now I've added some shapes with the different leaves, and I did stamp, it's not really a title, but I stamped a couple words and I stamped a pumpkin. There's lots of movement and there's lots of stuff going on in there. It doesn't really have a lot of dimension. It sits very flat. So I thought having some extra leaves that I could kind of pop up and just give a little bit of extra texture and dimension would look really cool. And, you could leave that off, or maybe you have die cut leaves that are already from a collection. Like I'm using the cider and donut collection from Simple Stories, cider and donuts, I think, sorry, collection from Simple Stories. If there were a bunch of leaves on the sticker sheet or in one of the ephemera packs, you could use that too. But yes, those were just a couple techniques that I had for doing kind of quick and simple shapes, but still getting that black outline. I also think if you had like maybe gold leaves, because I'm doing more of a fall theme here, so I'm thinking more warmer colors. So for me, gold is more of a warm color than say a silver. But if you had like gold or copper or something like that, you could definitely put some of those in that like watercolor section. If you had sequins that were the right color, just anything that kind of gives a little bit of dimension and adds just that extra little bit of texture and interest to that section, I think would be really fun. So yeah, now that I have my picture kind of where I want it to go, it's my sweet little niece looking super cute many years ago when she was a teeny tiny baby, and now she's a not so teeny tiny beautiful young lady teenager. So yeah, but I just think this picture is so adorable, and so I didn't want to do too much extra stuff. I kind of like the the watercolor, and we've taken so much time to get that painted and then stamped, and then we'll be adding a couple of those extra leaves and a few other little things. And so that really needs to shine because you've taken all this time to put the work in. And so I didn't want to add a whole bunch of other stuff to the layout. And I also think that the picture is just super cute, and so it also needs to shine a little bit. So the cider and donuts collection isn't, I wouldn't say it's a perfect match color wise, but it was pretty darn close for me versus some of the other fall collections that I have. It had some pinks and yellows and greens, didn't really have sort of like the purples or the reds, but that's okay. Actually, that's not true. I think a couple of the little mushrooms on the mushroom paper have a bit of red to them, and the brown paper that has the flowers on it definitely matches what my niece is wearing. And then it's kind of got a bit of that hint of red to it, so I think it brings in some of the warmth and a little bit of depth there. And then my niece has some nice bright blue on her little dress, so that kind of matches the blue that I used. And even with my colors, I really wanted to go rainbow because the inspiration photo is rainbow, but I tried to keep them warm, and so I tried to definitely go back in and add a little more orange whenever I needed to. I kept my greens kind of more on the warm side, my blues a little bit more on the warm side, so it hopefully says fall, but also kind of rainbow-ish, and just fun for a little girl layout. So I went ahead and just added a bunch of layers, kind of picking through the B-side patterns and making sure that I had some green, some yellow, some pink, some browns, and just all the tones that I thought would work really well with the watercolors. And then I did also pick a couple little embellishments kind of to create a little title area, and those are all from Paige Evans. I'm just trying to think what the name of that collection is. I don't think it's officially a fall collection, even though it very much leans towards fall colors. And it's the puffy, or I guess they're not puffy stickers, but like the foam stickers and the one sticker sheet that I used are both from that same collection, and the name of that collection is escaping me right now. Yeah, so I just pulled 2 pieces, one from each of those sheets. Oh, I guess actually I added that little star, or not star, that little heart that had a little bit of kind of gold in it, just to bring some gold to that right hand side, because I knew I was going to splatter on the left hand side. And then that little love you is actually one of the little cut apart pieces from the cider and donuts collection as well. So very, very simple. And then I just popped in those little leaves that I cut out. I kind of tried to do a few different shapes, but I really didn't want to make them too intricate to where I was, fussy cutting all these little teeny tiny leaf details. So just kind of like a basic leaf shape, and one that's maybe more of a, a wavy shape, just different shapes. And really that's it, because again, I wanted my watercolor work to kind of stand out. I didn't want to take the spotlight away from it. So a few little pops of those extra leaves, and I did add some brads. I had that set from the cider and donuts collection as well. So little squirrel in there and a couple little brads to add a different kind of texture. And that is my layout. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please click subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the other 3 ladies to see what they are inspired by this week. And until next time, happy scrapping. Bye.
What about the channel?